You are watching old school, new school football, or maybe you're just listening to old school, new school football. Either way, he is the new school, the suave, debonair, Jude Allume. You might know him as at the THEE Mr. Allume on social media. If you can't avoid him, he's probably stalking you right now. And I'm the old school part of this equation. My name is Will Masisak. You might know me as at Accidental Zen. At either rate, Jude, we've made it through all the way now to the penultimate week, through the penultimate week of the NFL season. 1 week to left in the regular season. Lots to talk about. Let's get it started. Let's get it started. And that song is old now.
Yeah, we expect that from you every week. Something to just remind us that you're old. But it's the extra week of football, week 18 for the first time.
That's right.
In NFL, well, for the first time as a regular season in NFL history.
Pretty good. Not too bad. Where would you like to begin? How about the Cincinnati, Kansas City?
We're on the same page already because that was going to be my first.
Yeah, which lived up to the billing. It didn't look at early. Kansas City jumped out to a big lead, and it kind of looked like, okay, here go the Bengals. Finally, the team that everybody was touting. This is their week to fold. But with a little help from some questionable officiating on the last drive, they managed to pull this game out against Kansas City. Let me ask you this. 2 years ago, everybody was talking about Kansas City's offense. Oh my God, how will they ever be stopped with Patrick Mahomes throwing it to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce? Now you look at Cincinnati and you're like, oh my God, Joe Burrow throwing it to Chase. How are they ever going to stop this offense? Just those two alone seem to have an incredible chemistry. Which offense do you like out of those two right now? And what'd you make of this game?
We're talking which one do I like going into the playoffs. I'm going to go with the one that's been there, that's won a championship, that's represented the AFC the past 2 seasons. I'm going with Kansas City. Yes, they lost this game, but it wasn't because of the offense. Granted, in the second half, the offense didn't look all that good. It looks like they, kind of took the foot off the gas for a little bit there. And then once they saw, the Bengals are in it too and putting up scores with us, it's like it was a little bit too little, too late. And they just couldn't keep up with Cincinnati all of a sudden. I love this one for the Chiefs. Hands down, this is the best one they've had all season. I love it for multiple reasons. Number one, you kept up with the Chiefs. Number two, it's the best opponent that you've beaten. I think the best out of their 10 wins easily. This is the best opponent they've beaten. Number three, you could have easily laid there and played dead, but you said, no, we're going to fight, came back in the second half and won this game. Love this Bengals team going forward. I feel like you add a couple more pieces through the draft, maybe get some really nice pieces in the offseason through free agency. And this is like a team that can potentially win a championship in the next 5 years or so. Love. Even though everybody hated it at the beginning of the season, there were so many he's a bust rumors. Jamar Chase, that's a great pickup. It looks like they've picked up right where they left off at LSU. Burrow comes back from that knee injury last season, and he's a valid MVP candidate right now. I don't think he's going to win, but he's definitely in that conversation. So this is a great win for the Bengals. Help them solidify themselves as division champions for the first time since 2015. I mean, the future looks bright for them, for the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, it sucks. You could have pretty much wrapped up that first round bye for yourself, but they're still in it. They'll need to win next week, and they'll need Tennessee to lose. But to the victor go the spoils. Salute to the Bengals on this one.
Yeah, one thing about this game that you may not have noticed is during pregame warmups, the Chiefs' starting left tackle got injured and was scratched from the game. So they had already decided who would be active for the game. So essentially what happened was they were already down to their last 2 tackles in the game starting. And then Niang got injured in the mid first quarter or even early first quarter, a nightmare scenario. So they ended up playing Joe Tooney, I think it was, that the longtime guard. They played him at left tackle in this game. It was a miracle, actually, that they managed to get out to a big lead. So I think that was definitely a factor in terms of late in the game. They started to having some troubles on offense in the second half. They just didn't look like themselves. So we'll see how they go going forward. As for the Bengals, Yeah, right now it's hard not to think that they are building something really nice there, and that they have a chance to take control of their division for a few years. But the caveat is, let's see them do it for a year or two before we say that, because you might have said that about Baltimore, you might have said that about Kansas City, and now I don't think anybody's thinking either Kansas City or Baltimore has a stranglehold on their division going forward. At least not the way that they did 2 years ago, where they were like, for the next 10 years, these are going to be the two teams. But I give the Bengals their due. They were the best team in the AFC North, and they played like they're interested in being more than that this year against Kansas City. Especially impressed coming back after being down 14-0, 17-0, whatever it was earlier in the game.
They were down 2 scores for a good portion of the game. Yeah. I mean, just looking from a broader spectrum, who really expected the Bengals to come out not even as a playoff team, but as the division champs in the division with a good Pittsburgh defense, or at least was supposed to be really good in the season. Yeah, a really good Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. And, it's unbelievable.
Whatever
really,
that other team is.
No, it's the Cleveland Browns, but I mean, I'm not going to throw them in there because I don't think anybody at the beginning of the year was like, yeah.
No, they were actually, the Browns were the consensus pick to win the division. Yeah.
I don't know whose consensus that was, but as long as it's Baker Mayfield, I wouldn't have them as division winners. Apologies to Mr. Mayfield. But just looking at it from that broader spectrum, I mean, to come into the season where everybody laughed at them when they said, yeah, the playoffs is the goal for this season. And now that goal has come to fruition. It's unbelievable for them, like salute to the Bengals.
Yeah, I think the Bengals, depending on the matchup that they end up getting into their second round game, feels like the Bengals have a chance to make a little noise here in the AFC.
If the playoffs were to start this week, they would be playing the Colts. How much of a chance would you give them against the Colts really quickly?
I think the Colts are sort of a charade. I mean, they're good, but not a great team. I think there's, we could talk about this later when we get into the playoff scenarios, but it totally wouldn't shock me if the Colts did not win in Week 18. Apparently, they've lost 4 in a row to Jacksonville, and Jacksonville's been terrible during that time. So they've lost 4 in a row in Jacksonville. So, and for Jacksonville, it's their Super Bowl. So we'll see how it goes. If that's the matchup, Colts and Bengals, I'm taking the Bengals at home. I was more thinking about what happens after that. So if the Bengals, I think, are going to end up being maybe the 3rd or even the 4th seed, that puts them in a little bit of a rough spot going forward. They don't match up. They're going to go back to Kansas City and play a Chiefs team. That's a tough matchup for anybody.
Let's hop over to the NFC. It was the slumping Cardinals against the streaking hot Dallas Cowboys. How did you take that game in?
I don't know. It's interesting, man. Like I think, like most teams in the NFL that I watched this year, there are moments in the game or week to week where you just think, wow, this team has really got it all together and they could do anything. And then later you see them in the same game or in a different week and you think, wow, they're just not as good as they're supposed to be. I'm not sure what the takeaway I'm supposed to have is for this matchup. But I kind of feel like I wouldn't, if they matched up again later in the year, I wouldn't know which team to pick, but I don't think I'm going to put my money on either one of them making a run in the NFC. That's that's the short answer to your question. How did you see it? Maybe you have a more nuanced take than that.
No, not at all. Cowboys were hot, came in on a 5-game winning streak. But I mean, they beat Washington twice. They beat the Giants. They beat the Saints. And I don't believe what's his name? Taysom Hill. I don't believe he was playing in that game against the Saints. So everybody's, clamoring about how Dallas is getting hot at the same time and they look good and their defense is spectacular. But I'm like, take it with a grain of salt because they're not playing against, playoff teams that they'll be facing in a couple of weeks. So I came in thinking, the Cardinals, this is their chance to kind of get back on track. And even though their record would say they're one of the better teams, I felt like, they had a really good chance against Dallas. Mm-hmm. They had the pieces to kind of stop that Dallas pass rush that's been absolutely crazy over that 5-game win streak. Defensively, I felt like they matched up pretty good against Dallas. Unfortunately for Dallas, they lost Michael Gallup, but still they matched up well in stopping CeeDee Lamb, and he was pretty much a non-factor for most of the game. Amari Cooper, he caught a touchdown, but it wasn't a big day for him either. Yes, Dallas, this last game put up like 50 points, but it was still like, Dallas playing against a Washington team that was beat up and kind of not really into the game at all. So I still wanted to see Dak and Zeke go out there and perform because I feel like they're still very much slumping. It was a better game for them, but it wasn't a great game for them. So I'll say for Dallas, it's kind of worrisome because this is kind of your measuring stick here of how do we really fare in these playoffs. And I don't think it's very good at this point. And then for Arizona, it's really good because it's like we need to stay and potentially still win this division. We need to stay in this playoff race and get ourselves a win so we can kind of get this loser feeling off of us and get rolling before, the games really do matter. And they were able to do that. So obviously the winner, it's a more important game for them. For Dallas, they just need to say, you know what, put this game in the past. We've got the Eagles, another potential playoff team that we're playing next week, and we need to find a way to win. More importantly, we need to find a way to solidify that Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott are going to be good. They're going to be rolling, and there's not going to be any talk about them being in any sort of a slump. Otherwise, then, it's another one-and-done year in the playoffs for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I don't know. Are they supposed to get Nuke Hopkins back for the playoffs? Is that the expectation?
They are, yeah.
Yeah, so that makes them an entirely different team and probably makes them enough of a threat to think about, them making a Final Four, at least in the NFC. But yeah, I don't know. Dallas, I like what they're building, especially, on defense, but they had a long way to go. From last year to this year, they made a big step up, but I'm not, I don't know. I love to see those guys flying around and make nice plays. Diggs, is a guy who made a big splash with all the interceptions, but I'm not sure he's a great cover guy. So it's kind of like it's a high risk and reward with him, sort of Marcus Peters like. And their offense has been once when it all clicks, it's great. They find when they play the right opponent, but they've also played games where they're mind-numbingly have difficulty moving the football. And I don't know what to make of Zeke Elliott. It feels like he's either disinterested or not healthy or he's fallen off a cliff or something. I'm not really sure what's up with their run game.
He is playing with the bum knee, but instead of taking a break, he's trying to play through it. I don't know. I think I would have took the 2 weeks maybe that it would have took to get healthy, but it could have been longer than that. But point being, I don't think playing through the injury has really helped his stock at all. And you know what? Tony Pollard has looked much better than him for much of the season too. That may be something they address in the offseason, especially considering he's got this huge contract that he was holding out for. Now he got it, and he's just not the same back that he used to be. Nonetheless, I'm sure, if they're able to pull off some magic, win a couple games in the playoffs, possibly make it to a Super Bowl, everything will be forgotten. It's like, yeah, we'll pay you whatever you want as long as you're performing and getting us this championship.
Yeah. And also, I think, to be fair about Pollard's a really good number 2.
Yeah.
And even when Zeke Elliott was playing at a high level, he was out of the game when the Cowboys were behind. 2-minute drill or they're behind. Zeke Elliott's sitting on the bench and Pollard's playing the game anyway. So in these close games and playoff type games, it's you're probably going to see more Pollard because the games are going to be in situations where they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. But we'll see. I think they're a year away from us knowing how good they can be and maybe them being a contender.
Definitely. Let's go to some other contenders, or at least one other contender in the Rams and Ravens. That was a much closer game than a lot of people expected, I would say, wouldn't you?
Well, if you recall, I picked the Ravens to win this game. It's the West Coast Dome team coming out and playing in December in Baltimore. They were blessed with a kind of a nice weather day, which helped matters a little bit. But my fear for what the Rams are going to be in the playoffs was sort of how they played early in this game, where their quarterback looked mystified, and they got an opponent who's a tough out, and it just felt like for everything going against Baltimore that they always play hard. They're tough at home. And as I said last week, they have a field goal kicker that as soon as they cross midfield, they're in scoring range. So that makes for some tight games. They're rarely out of it. It's usually a close game towards the end. Credit to the Rams for figuring out a way, and for Matt Stafford for figuring out a way. But yeah, I just think, you see this team at home on turf against teams in their division, and they could just light it up. And then you get them playing a game of different style game than they want to play. opponents make the match, they say in boxing, and I felt like that's what I took away from this matchup is I don't want to see the Rams play against somebody who wants to play that kind of football. I'm not sure how many teams are like that in the NFC, but I just feel like it doesn't bode well for them traveling, say, to Lambeau Field.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I was thinking right there. Like, put them against another team where they're going to have to be on the road, travel in the cold, and, get away from, the LA weather and atmosphere. And are they really a team that can contend? It hurts to have to ask that question after all season. I'm saying, yeah, these guys are real contenders. It was as disappointing a win as you can have because here you are facing a team with a depleted defense, just injuries at every level, and their backup quarterback is starting. And I just thought, yeah, they're on the road. Yeah, it's cold, but you're clearly better. You're on a winning streak right here. You should just be steamrolling these guys because granted, they're a talented team, a well-coached team, but because of injuries, you're basically playing their second team at a very large number of positions. So I really thought the Rams would just come in and take care of business. Yes, they got it done in the end, but I just wasn't thinking this was going to be a slugfest for them. Because in my head, I'm thinking, just like you said, they go on the road against the Green Bay. You're not going to get that chance to let them go up by 2 or 3 scores. And then it's like, all right, let's play like the better team we are and find a way to win. Green Bay is going to put the foot down on the pedal. Aaron Rodgers at home at Lambeau, they've already secured that number 1 seed. So if you go as far as you want to go, that's where you're headed. He's not going to let you spot him a 2-score lead and come back and win. That's just not happening. Another thing that I kind of took away is just like, not from this game alone, but for the last several weeks, all of a sudden Matthew Stafford is kind of back to his old tricks in Detroit days where he's throwing so many interceptions. It's unbelievable. Yes, he's good. He's great in this Rams system. That offense, it's definitely looking different without him. And at times it can be high octane. But the interceptions, you can't have that. I'm sorry. Throwing pick sixes. I think they said that he leads the league in pick sixes at this point as well. You need to clean that up as soon as possible. This wasn't something that was happening during the first 8 games of the season. Now, all of a sudden, it's an issue for you. You're playing much better defenses starting next week, all right? Figure it out because, again, even if you're at home, one of these better teams, if you're throwing interceptions, spotting them those 2-3 touchdown leads, it's going to end very poorly for you, and I can promise you that.
Yeah, I mean, a leopard doesn't change its spots. That's who Matthew Stafford is. And people are like, well, he's playing in Detroit and you can't really judge his career. It's like, yeah, guy's been around a long enough time now that you at least get a feel for what his flaws are. And, feeling pressure to try to make something happen and making mistakes is one of those things that has followed him around his whole career. Obviously, I think the world of Sean McVay, in terms of creating an offensive system. Same with Shanahan in San Francisco, where they've made a lot out of whatever they've had to work with. And I think they can make almost anybody look good for a little while. But it's just sort of, now there's a half season or season's worth of film on Stafford now with the Rams, and teams have started to figure out some things they can do to slow them down. So, yeah, it feels like, once again, that there's a reason that certain players and certain teams are more successful coming down the stretch and in December, January games and in the postseason, and that some aren't. Yes, there's always a chance for somebody to kind of rewrite their script, but you have to change what your mindset is or something about your play in order to be able to get there. You can't just expect to do the same thing and eventually it'll work out for you. So that's my old guy rant. Listen, you clown. What have we missed we missed somebody in the AFC we wanted to talk about. The Colts and Raiders. It's another game where, the Colts, they didn't think they were going to have Carson Wentz all week, and then he became available. But then they just sort of, I've seen this a couple of times this year where guys are not expected to play because they're on the COVID list, and then they get reinstated late in the week, but they're just not, they don't come back and play at the level that you expect them to play. Do you think that was a factor in this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, one of the things you hear numerous times when you're playing football at any level, you're going to practice how you play. It's one of those cliches, but it holds true. So if you're not practicing, how do you expect you're going to play? Yes, I understand you're going to be in meetings. You're still in Zoom meetings, and you're still listening to installs and learning what plays they want to run, and you're watching the defense and all that thing. But you need that on-field portion of it too, because it's more than just what you put down on paper, what you're listening to when coaches are instructing you. It's what you go through in practice, what you're seeing that scout team do. And then when you see it on the field on Sunday, it's like, oh, I remember this. This is how I should adjust. This is what I should audible to, things of that nature. He didn't have that opportunity. Yes, he's still going to give you a better chance than whoever they were going to throw out there if he wasn't playing. But at the same time, it's still a disadvantage to them. Just having him come in all of a sudden and you're good to go and you're playing on Sunday. In addition to that, the Raiders are still technically in the playoff chase right now. So it wasn't going to be an easy game where they just were going to push them over and win. Wentz played, he only put up 148 yards passing. Didn't really look comfortable all day. And then even Jonathan Taylor, I thought, given that Wentz wasn't practicing all week, they were going to have him a lot more involved, run the ball a lot more. He got 20 touches, and for Jonathan Taylor and what they've been doing in the past few weeks, that's kind of under what you would expect for him because, he's imposed his will against so many teams. I feel like this was a game where they really should have taken advantage of that, let him run the show and, do what's been working for you. Run the ball as many times as you can. Eventually magic is going to hit because this guy's been magical during his torrid stretch. And then, build the play action off of that. And it was just kind of not that all week. And, kudos to the Raiders because they found a way to win. It seems like anytime there's some sort of news, it's like, okay, now we're going to win. John Madden, unfortunately, passes away, former coach of the Raiders. And now, they get their team together, find a way to win in dramatic fashion. Of course, another thing synonymous with the Raiders and the drama, they get that last second drive and run downfield, even though touchdown got called back because he was down by contact, but it was enough to put them in field goal range and they win the game. So now, they're still fighting for their playoff lives. The Colts are a little bit more in control, but it was, kind of disappointing because here you have a chance to solidify your spot in the playoffs and you just weren't able to, put it away. But, they're still alive in it. Raiders are still alive in it. It's going to come down to last week's season for these two teams.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if the Raiders were able to right the ship with everything that's happened to them this year and make the playoffs, that would be an incredible accomplishment, I think. I don't even know. Who is their interim coach? Do you know?
I know who, but I couldn't give you his name right now. His face is just vivid in my head right now.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just by way of saying, there's somebody who should get some consideration for Coach of the Year if they make it that far.
Definitely.
I mean, bringing up again the problem with the NFL awards, they vote for a lot of this stuff before the season's over. So it's like you don't even know if they made the playoffs or not. Maybe when you vote for that job, but I do think that it's just been an outstanding job. They haven't had Darren Waller for a few weeks. Yeah. They had all this trouble with stuff, during the course of the season and lost their head coach and lost their, probably their best receiver.
Henry Ruggs. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a hell of a year for the Raiders for sure. So there's sort of they moved to Vegas and they're sort of living the real life version of The Hangover, so maybe it all works out in the end for them. Let's see. Who do we miss?
We're going to go ahead and jump to week 18 here.
Oh, no. We got one more thing about week 17 to talk about.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Apparently, the security at the Giants Stadium, apparently they at MetLife, they were called on the radio because they thought that they had a fan who was streaking on the field that they had to go apprehend, and it turned out it was Antonio Brown. Oh, I'd like to laugh, but it's sad.
It is sad. It's definitely sad. You just hate to see a guy who could have literally been one of the all-time great receivers just go down this path that AB's gone down the past 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And then I feel like this past Sunday might be the final nail in the coffin of what his career is. I mean, we still don't have all the information. We still don't know exactly what went on. There's a lot of speculation, but it's like they asked AB to go in the game. AB saying no. Arians says, well, if you're not going to get in the game, then get out of here. And he said, all right, I'm out of here. And he's taking off his clothes and going into the sideline. Regardless what the situation, what the situation is. You shouldn't be, as a professional player, you shouldn't be stripping off on the sideline in the middle of a game that your team was losing at that point, throwing things into the crowd. Like, if you're having a dispute, handle it professionally. If you want to not be on the sidelines, just go into the tunnel, go into the locker rooms and wait until you guys can figure it out at a later time. Don't be that distraction and just give people more ammo to, kind of build that narrative against you that you're a head case and, it's a wonder why you're even still playing. I just can't see any team at this point saying, well, yeah, let's just ignore everything and bring him in, especially when it's like Tom Brady's there fighting for you and saying, yes, BA, we need him, especially when Chris Godwin is out for the rest of the season. And it's like, you're literally probably 1A to Mike Evans 1A. So it's like so many things just saying, calm down, stay in the moment, don't get too crazy about it. But again, we don't know all the pieces. Allege that, he had some contract stipulations that he could have got, some incentives with catches and touchdowns and yards, and he could have got all of them, and it would have gave him basically an extra $1 million, but he wasn't getting played. That's kind of contradictory to the other allegations that are being made that he was hurt. They were trying to force him to be hurt. Again, we don't know what's true and what's not true. All we know is what we saw, and that was AB just completely losing it and basically capping off his NFL career.
No, that was like a Hollywood movie ending where the guy just flips out the end and he's like, screw this job, I'm out of here. But yeah, it's like the what precipitated it. Yeah, there's a lot of he said, she said, or whatever about it. But yeah, this is it's funny. There are people who theorize in the Steelers fan community that the hit that he took from Perfect,
yeah.
It really there were some issues that he had in his life before that, but that really after that hit was when things changed with his life. Yeah, and it really started to go downhill quickly after that. So whether that accelerated the situation or not, I don't know. But I can tell you this: you saw the send off that Ben Roethlisberger got at Heinz Field last night. Antonio Brown if he remains a Steeler, he gets that kind of a send off. They send him right into the Hall of Fame someday. And now it's like he's, the memory of him is going to be this last few years. He's turned into like a caricature of, a diva wide receiver, which I'm not sure that, at one time he was that bad. He was always a little bit of a diva and a little bit of a wide receiver type ego, but, it seemed to be performing at a really high level and a good teammate. And then that just went all out the window. So I feel bad for him. I know that he has some stuff in his regular life to deal with, but if you had to lay money on like which NFL star is going to be broke in 5 years, he'd be a leading contender.
I think so. But more than anything, I just want to say, I hope whatever help he does need, he does get it. And he has people there to love and support him through whatever it is he's going through. I just hate to see it. He was literally one of my favorite players. Even though I wasn't that big a Pittsburgh fan, but, you couldn't help but watch him and see the amazing things he would do week in and week out and not just be in awe and respect his game. So it just really sucks to see this, dramatic of a downfall from the graces. But again, I hope he get all the help that he needs, man.
No, I'm with you. I feel like his inner circle is not supportive, that they're really kind of a problem.
Yeah.
But, I think he's to oversimplify it, I think he's just addicted to social media and the kind of attention that it gives. But social media can really, lead you to believe that you're better off doing certain things, and then like you're not making enough money, you're not famous enough, you're not getting the ball enough, because I think people will feed you that line maybe. So
for sure.
I don't know. Like you said, I agree with you. I hope that he gets it straightened out. I hope to see him in 10 years and have him, be sort of a better person in his life, have better control of his life, because he deserves that.
Yeah. That being said,
week 18, extra week.
Really a smooth transition after a heavy topic like that, but week 18, yeah. Let's.
There's not that much left that's exciting that has to be worked out. Maybe some. Question of the seeding here and there.
There are a handful of teams still fighting to get in.
Right. Well, let's start with the NFC because it's pretty simple. To me, the two biggest things are whether the Rams or Cardinals will be the division champion and get a home game in round one, and then whether the 49ers or New Orleans Saints will get that last playoff spot. Mm-hmm. So let's start with, I mean, for the Rams to get the division seems pretty unlikely because Arizona plays Seattle. Mm-hmm. But the Rams have a very tough game against San Francisco. So however you'd like to break that down for me, I'll give you the first.
Well, let's not say it's unlikely here because, yes, the Rams are playing you said they're playing Seattle?
The Cardinals are playing Seattle. The Cardinals are playing Seattle. San Francisco plays the Rams. The Rams have to win, and Seattle has to win in order to make that work to flip the division lead to the Rams.
Well, the Rams are already in the division lead right now. I'm just saying, yes, the Rams are 12-4 right now, and
nope. I simply can't read, Jude, so it's okay. So maybe it's more likely. Arizona wins against Seattle, and the 49ers, who are playing for their playoff lives, beat the Rams. Then Arizona wins the division. Now I got it.
Yes. What I was going to say, regardless, is, again, it's a division game. Yes, Seattle has been less than stellar this season, but they are still an interdivision rival, and I don't know what it is, but when they're playing these teams, they just always play each other tough. So let's not just give the victory to Arizona at this point just yet. In addition to that, Seattle just put up a 50-burger. Granted, it was against, the Lions, but the Lions are a relatively good team, or at least as good as a team with, that many losses can be. But I think how it's going to shape out, I think both of these teams end up winning because Arizona, they're trying to keep things rolling, especially finally getting off that 3-game losing streak. San Francisco, yes, they're playing for their playoff life. This is definitely the much closer game. But the Rams, it's like, this is your chance right here. Win the division, guarantee yourself a game at home in the playoffs, and, keep this ball rolling. You're in a nice little win streak right here. You're going up against a quality playoff opponent, potential playoff opponent. Take care of business, So I feel like both of these teams should win. That is the Rams and the Cardinals. That being said, it would keep things the same. Rams would stay. They would be the division winner, stay in that 2nd seed right now. And Arizona, they get in on a wild card. But which game were we specifically talking about here?
Well, let's start with to me, the really intriguing one is the Rams and 49ers. Mm-hmm. Like I said, 49ers playing for their playoff lives. Rams are playing to try to keep that home game division. So they both have a lot to play for, I think.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, nobody really, at risk of, benching their starters in anticipation of getting ready for the playoffs. I think, again, the Rams just need to take care of business. They're going up against a pretty decent team, but this is not the best 49ers team we've seen as of recent years. They've left a lot to be desired on the field in recent games because this is a team also that could have, solidified their playoff position, but they had some questionable losses down the road. Granted, they coming off a victory this week, but this is a much better opponent you're facing. I don't like Jimmy Garoppolo just going in on the road and taking care of business. I don't like Trey Lance, the rookie quarterback, stepping in and, kind of trying to fill that void Jimmy G is going to leave. So if Jimmy G plays, there's a good chance he might play. How healthy is that throwing hand going to be? Because I think it's the thumb on that throwing hand that's injured for him. So is he going to be 100%? We've seen it with a number of other quarterbacks who've had injuries to their throwing hand, and they just come back and they're not looking 100% comfortable. They're not all the way back yet. Do they want to make that mistake of like forcing somebody back too soon? And then we've seen some errant throws. It was with Russell Wilson. I don't know why that was slipping my head. Taysom Hill. Yeah. Taysom Hill, when he hurt his middle finger, he was rushed. He played through it, but he didn't look like the same quarterback either. So I just don't know if you're really saying, you know what, we're going to rush Jimmy back because he gives us a chance to win, or we're going to let the rookie kind of guide us into that championship. That'll open up a can of worms in itself because, hey, let's say Lance does start and he leads them to a victory. Now all of a sudden you're saying, you know what, let's stick with the hot hand for the playoffs. But I don't want to get into all that. bottom line, I think the Rams take care of business because they're just a better team right now, and they just really need to prove it and give themselves some more good juju going into the playoffs.
I think the Rams are vulnerable. I think that it's a good possibility. San Francisco has an outstanding run game, and they have, they understand what they're dealing with in terms of Aaron Donald and those pass rushers. And I think the way you beat the Rams is you get creative running the football and you make them use their ability against them, use their misdirection. And if there's one team that's really good at doing that, and the offensive line is good at doing that, it's San Francisco. So I think they're going to run the daylights out of the ball. So if the Rams
but I counter that.
Yeah.
Yes, they do all these things very well, but do you not think the Rams know that as well? And they're going to say, you know what, we're going to take away this run. We're going to force you to throw the ball, whether it's Jimmy G with the bad throwing thumb or whether it's Trey Lance. And, he threw a pick last week. See if we could force him to make some more mistakes against our really good secondary.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a possibility, especially, as you said, their secondary has definitely got some ability to take things away from you. Like I said, I feel like it's judo. You use the strength of this defense and its pursuit against them. You get Aaron Donald going one way, you go back the other direction. That's what they will attempt to do. I think they're pretty good at that. Some teams can't just suddenly do that. They're not going to change who they are, but that's really who the 49ers are. I guess San Francisco can still get that last playoff spot with a loss if New Orleans also loses. But I just feel like they're going to, it's very likely the 49ers will play their best game of the season. Whether that will be enough or not, I don't know. The Rams have an outside shot to play all the rest of their games at home. If they clinch the division here and Green Bay gets upset. So I feel like, that's one path where you could see the Rams actually going all the way, winning the Super Bowl, is if they get to play at home in comfortable surroundings. But yeah, I think this, I don't know if I 100% think the 49ers will win, but I think this is a game where, I don't know what the point spread is, that they'll cover, that they'll make a real game of it. I don't think this is a Rams, runaway win. Not the way they're playing, not the way they played last week.
Yeah. Not with all the interceptions Matthew Stafford is throwing.
No, but both teams are capable of making mistakes, and maybe that's it. Maybe it'll be a game where whoever stops the run best and makes the fewest mistakes will win. It's a sort of a conservative playoff type of atmosphere. Maybe for both those teams.
Let's jump to the AFC. We've got Chargers, Raiders, both of them trying to fight for their playoff lives. How do you see this one going?
Well, they play the late game, so you got to talk about the earlier games as well. So essentially, if Jacksonville doesn't win their game against the Colts, and something I mentioned to you before we got started, the Colts have lost, I think, 4 in a row in Jacksonville, including when Jacksonville was the worst team in the league. So I won't completely eliminate the possibility that Jacksonville could win this game, especially the other thing is, as bad as they've been, this is their Super Bowl. For Jacksonville, it's like their chance to knock another team out of the playoffs, I think, and the fact that it's their last game of the year would probably give them at least some momentum. It might be the kind of game where they cut out to an early lead and, don't get surpassed until later in the game. So there's that. Secondly, it doesn't really benefit Jacksonville to get the number 1 pick versus the number 2 pick. The difference in the quality of prospect from 1 to 15 in this year's draft is so minimal. And from Jacksonville's standpoint, they already have their quarterback. So I'm not sure that they're worried about getting the number 1 pick. So that's the second reason I'd say they might actually go all out to win this game and not tank. If that doesn't happen, then you had a real barn burner. In other words, if Indianapolis wins, you got a real barn burner then in Chargers and Raiders, because that is one team in, one team out. If that happens, there's a good chance both of them could get in if the Colts don't win. So that's why I wanted to say all of that before we got to Raiders Chargers. I think I just can't believe that the Raiders are going to make the playoffs with everything that's happened to them, and that the Chargers won't. So the Chargers have some big flaws, especially stopping the run. I actually don't believe in the Raiders' run game all that much. And I still think they have some issues stopping pass rush. So I feel like it's a good matchup for the Chargers. The Chargers should win this game. How about you?
Yeah, I like Chargers winning this game as well. But it's kind of been the same story for the Chargers all season, the clearly better team talent-wise. And they just haven't really played their best football. They played good enough football a lot of times, but they also let teams that shouldn't be competitive with them into games. The Raiders have really overcome a lot. I think, you need to tip your hat off to them as a team just to even be in the playoff race at this point of the season is unbelievable for them. You lose your head coach, your top receiver, so many other things going on with them, with injuries and, other players having mishaps, DUIs galore for this team. And it's just like they just keep finding ways to win. But I just can't really see it. Chargers know they need to win. They know they're the better team. I just can't really see the Raiders, coming up with a big win one more time. And I just don't really know what they do especially well that they can say this is what we're going to do to guarantee a victory against the Chargers. If they get Darren Waller back, which is another question mark, I like the increase in their chances to win, but we don't know what that's going to be like. And even if he does come back, like how conditioned is he? Because he's been out for like the last 4 or 5 weeks. So I don't know in how good a shape he's in. I don't know how fresh he is or, how poor his conditioning is at this point. But they just need all hands on deck right now, and I don't know that they'll have it. Meanwhile, the Chargers, they got Austin Eckler back, and he looked like he didn't miss a step after missing week 16, I believe it was, due to COVID. So I just like the Chargers. I like their personnel. I like them defensively, offensively, just more than what the Raiders have to offer. And I think, it's time to take care of business. We're either going to be a good team or the good team that misses the playoffs. I mean, one of those sounds a lot better to me. So
the Chargers have been a good team that's missed the playoffs before,
several times.
Yes. Just wake me up if you've heard this story before. Yeah. Well, I think the other thing, I think as a football fan, I want the Chargers to make the playoffs over the Raiders because I feel like the Chargers have more of a chance of maybe pulling out an upset victory in the postseason. More exciting to watch. The Raiders, I feel like, are a one and done team almost no matter who they play. One outcome to look out for that would be sort of the nightmare scenario for the NFL. If the Colts lose and the Steelers beat the Ravens, that means that if the Raiders and Chargers game ends in a tie, they both make the playoffs. And imagine it's a close game and you go to overtime. Neither one of those teams is going to want to do anything risky. They're not going to kick a long attempt a long field goal to win the game. They're going to play it very conservatively. There's a chance that the NFL's ultimate nightmare of teams purposely trying not to win might come into play for the last playoff spot, which would be a horrendous look for the league. So somebody needs to offer somebody some kind of incentive to not finish in a tie, I guess.
I hear what you're saying, and I know it's the likely outcome if they find themselves in that position. But there's just something about Brandon Staley and the way he coaches and how it's like it's like a decision that needs to be made, and it's like this is the obvious decision. This is what we're gonna do, and he does something completely different. So it's like I think he'd be the coach like where it's like, yeah, we can just tie and both come out of here with a playoff victory, and he goes for it regardless. I don't know if they'll necessarily get it. I don't know if it'll be the downfall of the team, but I can see Brandon Staley making a choice like that and saying, no, we're going to go for it, balls to the walls, and, just leaving it all out there. No pun intended.
No pun intended. Yeah, just, also I have to say speaking for myself as a Steelers fan, it would be the most pathetic way to lose your playoff spot to, you get this upset for the Jacksonville and the Steelers win and they're in the playoffs, no problem. And then those two teams choose to tie so that they both make it and you get kicked out of, you thought for 8 hours you were in and then you get out because of a tie. That'd be the worst,
That would really suck for you at least. But.
Yeah. And not that the Steelers are going to do anything in the playoffs, but still it's like, oh my God, of all the ways to get kicked out of the playoffs.
I kind of love how you're already giving this W to the Steelers.
No, I'm not. I'm only saying it's to make it interesting. But, don't forget you just mentioned that the Ravens were, a little bit shorthanded and the Steelers honestly have played the Ravens pretty well compared to the rest of the league the last few years, and won earlier this year. So yeah, I'm not projecting any kind of a win. I'm just saying to make things interesting. Colts lose, Steelers win. That does make the last game, the Sunday night game, kind of interesting for the NFL. Just quickly before we wrap today, One interesting thing to me is the number one seed in the AFC, and I'll tell you right now, Tennessee is holding it. The Chiefs have to be really fighting to win that number one seed and not just going through the motions in the last week, because imagine this scenario. Imagine that the Chiefs, win their first round game and have to eventually go to Tennessee to make it to, the Super Bowl. And you go to Tennessee on a day when the weather is horrendous and you throwing the football is not really in the cards. That would be a big setback for Kansas City, I think, and a lot better chance for them if they're at home.
It would.
Any chance of that happening? Jude, what do you think?
I think it really all depends on Derrick Henry. Is he coming back? What's he going to look like when he comes back? Is he still going to be the dominant, stiff-arming machine that we all know him to be? If that's the case, then, Tennessee, Mike Vrabel, you need to get way more acknowledgement, way more mention in Coach of the Year talks, because this is a terrible offensive team. I'm going to keep saying it, but they just keep finding ways to win. They keep playing unbelievably good defense, and they do just enough offensively to put points on the board. And, they win those ugly games. And you know what? As terrible as it may be to fans and people watching, that's what you want during the playoffs. It's not about how pretty the win is. It's about the win, and they're getting those wins. Now you can get your best player back. I believe they just opened up his practice window period after while he's on IR. So we've got this 21 days. If they get this bye week, it's just that much better for them, where they can, give them an extra week to rest up, get better, and then face whoever they face in that second round. The Chiefs, you have no one to blame but yourself. I mean, you had the Bengals up 2 scores, and, you let them back in the game. You kind of counted it as a victory before the game was over, and now you have to fight for it. I really think it's going to be the Titans, unless they decide to just not play their players because they know they're already in the playoffs. But they're facing Houston, so I think it's a really good chance if they play all their guys, they get out of there with a victory, and the Chiefs are there at a second seed. Chiefs versus Titans, I think it's going to be a really good game. I think you could never count out Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, even if they do have to go on the road to the Titans when it's all said and done. But again, it all depends on if they get that man, the dangerous Derrick Henry back. Like, he's going to be a major X factor for the Titans and how realistic their championship run can be. That being said, I just have to again say great job to the Titans. I, for one, just counted them out completely once he went down. But hey, they are, fighting, not fighting, basically the number one seed right now.
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect to Raiders interim coach Rich Bisaccia, that's his name. That the Mike Vrabel gets my vote for Coach of the Year. What they've done there is amazing. Actually, if you look at what they've done running the football, they've had as much success running it since Derrick Henry went down than while they had Derrick Henry. And for a lot of that time, they were without A.J. Brown too. So I just feel like they're holding it together with smoke and mirrors, man, spit and rubber bands. So I'm a big fan of what the coaching job that they've done there to try to keep that together. And they're going to end up, they've won the division. Good chance of them getting the number one seed. They play Houston. They lost to the Texans, I think, the last time. Probably not going to overlook them again.
Yeah. You're not, especially when you've got a chance to lock down the number one seed. I don't think you're underestimating anybody that you're facing at this point. You definitely don't want to go into the playoffs with a loss to the Texans, and then all of a sudden now you're playing on the road first week of the playoffs when you could, be resting that first week of the playoffs. So I don't think I just don't have it on my, upset radar. But this is the type of season in the NFL where the least expected becomes the expected. So
yeah, well, we said it from the beginning of the year. It's like you don't really know what's going to happen from week to week. Mm-hmm. So this may be another one of those weeks. That would be the perfect cap from the NFL standpoint. I talked about the horror of a tie and an intentional tie in the in the Raiders Chargers game. Yeah. Well, their dream scenario is that Week 18 has some shocking results that end up flipping the script,
shake everything up for you. Yeah,
that's right. That would be the perfect ending to this regular season for the NFL. So anyway, Jude, speaking of perfect endings,
not that they needed any more reason to win, but again, you don't want to, just like the Chiefs wouldn't want to go on the road against the Titans when it's nice and cold and they get Derrick Henry back. Nobody in the AFC, I believe, would want to go on the road and face the Chiefs at home. So if you needed one more reason, don't give the Chiefs any more reason to be the favorite to win everything again for the third straight year. You know, just kind of keep them out of Arrowhead and let yourself be the guys that everyone's got, you know, their eyes on as the place to be to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Jude, speaking of dream endings, we've reached the end of the show, I think. You got any last words for us before we fly away?
I think I'm going to just steal something I figure you might say, and salute to Ben Roethlisberger. Not sure how this last week is going to play out, but 18 years, and I think, again, depending how this week plays out, Pittsburgh hasn't had a losing season in his 18 years. You know, just got to tip your hat off to that. Really good player. Brought you guys 2 Super Bowls, I believe. You know, definitely going to make it to the Hall of Fame one day. Not the way I figure he would want this to end at this point. Not his best season, but nonetheless, I mean, he's still one of the greater quarterbacks we've seen, at least in my times. You've seen a lot more quarterbacks than me, but one of the greater quarterbacks that I've seen in my time. So just want to take, you know, that moment to acknowledge, you know, a great career.
Yeah, appreciate it. And I salute the Pittsburgh fans and organization for making it kind of, you know, more of a storybook send-off than it would have been last year had he been sitting on that bench in an empty stadium, despite the fact he threw for 500 yards in that game. And he could say, well, I threw for 500 yards in my last game, but it was a loss. I think he would rather have had this game where they were all sorts of discombobulated and conservative on offense. And he didn't, you know, he probably played one of the worst games I've ever seen him play, whether it was nerves or whatever. But I think he'd much rather walk out of there with a kneel down and a walk out of the stadium to do exactly what he did. So I feel like that's a really appropriate send off, and I'm happy that it worked out that way. And you know, if they luck into the playoffs, well, so be it. But I think just the mere fact that, as you said, no losing seasons in 18 years, that's a pretty impressive feat for sure. At any rate,
just admit to everyone that's what you're hoping for. They somehow sneak into it and win it all.
No, I mean, well, it'd be nice to win one. It'd be nice to go to the playoffs and like win a playoff game before he exits, but that's like a pipe dream with the way that this team is organized. You never ever say never, because it's a matchup league. It's a week-to-week league. You know, they're capable of, they've had weeks where their offense looked great. They've had weeks where their defense was unstoppable. They just haven't really played any game this year where they had it all going on, except for, I mean, maybe week 1 against Buffalo, but even that, you know, not so much. So I'm not that unrealistic, Jude.
I didn't say that you truly believe it. I said that you hope that.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, anytime you have a star player for your team for 18 years, you know, you hope that they get off on a good note. So that's for sure. Anyway, Jude, speaking of good notes and getting off, talk to you on another edition of Old School New School. He's Jude Allume. I'm Will Masisak. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, and most of all, listen to the show and come back next week when we talk about the wrap up of the regular season and moving on to the playoffs. Jude, great show.
Later,
Later on, bro.
See ya.